Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Motivation and That. I'm Natalie, your host, and this is where we take hot mess to high potential. And as you may have seen with some of recent guests, I'm getting folks that are listening and saying, I've got someone you should talk to. And it happened just about a month or two ago where an old coworker of mine from the VA reached out and said, Hey Natalie, I'm sitting down with this guy, Joseph Schmitt. We used to work together at the VA, we're grabbing a meal and his story and his experience are perfect for the podcast. And I always love when it's someone who recommends a guest to join us. And I have to tell you, over the last few weeks, getting to know Joseph and getting to read the book that we're going to talk about today, The Arc of Humanity, which you can see I have marked up as I love to do with books. We'll get into this. We'll talk about what drove this, but I think this is an incredible reflection back on experiences that Joseph, our guest, has had. And I'm hoping to learn right along with everyone else and take part in this journey together. So, without further ado, things you'll hear about today are the uncomfortable spaces that make or break us or redefine us or drive us to truly challenge ourselves to understand who we are and what we're capable of. And hopefully I've done that justice in that kind of quick thinking of it. But Joseph Schmitt is the guest today. He has been in a little bit of everywhere: military background, financial background, in healthcare within the federal system. You work with bees now, you have a nonprofit. There is so much there to unpack, and I'm not going to try to. So Joseph, I'm going to turn it to you. Tell us a little bit about you, who you are, what your journey's been like in getting to where you are today, and then we'll dive into what really built this whole idea of the arc of humanity and what it means.
Thank you, Natalie, and it's great to be here, and I'm just honored to be on your show. I've listened to a lot of your podcasts on Spotify, and so I'm just really excited to have the opportunity to sit down and talk a little bit about myself and about the arc of humanity. I'm a Midwestern boy. I grew up in Southern Illinois for the most part of my life, and joined the Navy at a young age, at 17. And up until that point in my life, I'd never really been outside of the Midwest. And so at a young age, I got to travel the world. I got to travel all over the Atlantic seaboard. And I also became a father at a young age too, at the age of 19. And so at a at a critical point of my youth, I really just started to take on a lot of responsibilities, which was very developmental for me. And then I started to have a lot of challenges as far as like raising a family. And so that started shaping a lot of my trajectory. And so once I got out of the Navy, I spent several years in college and trying to get my education. I got my education in aviation management and maintenance. I've lived a lot of lives. The Navy was a big part of my life. Being a father was a big part of my life, and so I have done a lot of different things in my life to try to to support my family. So it was a lot of different jobs. A big part of that was in the federal service with the Department of Veterans Affairs, and so it's just been a mixed match of experience that I've gotten, and it has taken me on this journey through a lot of different perspectives in life. And you know it has been hard to, like the compounding forces of like the tragedies and a lot of the issues that I had with, with having a young family, have been hard to work through. And
It's funny as you're talking, I'm thinking of, we always talk about pulling away the layers of a thing or a person. And it's almost like as we go through our life, we build those layers and we really may not understand what are those core components. What's at the heart of the onion, right? When you
yeah,
cut it open, and what are those pieces? And when I was reading through some of the vignettes in the book, and we're going to hit on some of the quotes because the way you write is a way that for me helps to digest very quickly impactful moments that often people take a lot of time before they get to the punchline, right? Till they get to the
Mhm.
point, and you didn't. And I mean, and just kind of scrolling through, seeing the threads of empowering what really is historical trauma. So those early years, and then trying to learn as you're growing yourself in a way, kids raising kids, I mean, you're 19, you're still a kid in a
Yeah.
lot of ways. You speak very openly about your relationship or your estrangement with your son. You talk about this
Mhm.
motorcycle wreck you had that, brought a lot of perspective and awareness, and those kind of weaving in and out of the story. I can understand how it's hard to summarize that in a quick, who are you? Like
Yeah.
there are so many pieces of this jigsaw puzzle that kind of start to parse together, and why it really makes sense that, and I'd love to hear, this premise on what the arc of humanity is for you, because it's 52 weeks, and in those 52 weeks there's times where you encourage, hey, if you didn't get the whole week done, go back. It's a reset.
Mhm.
So it's probably going to be more than 52 weeks for some of the things that are a little trickier. But what makes it different in looking at it is it's not the things like the 75 hard that people sign up to do. And you're pretty truthful on the back cover. It says, "Hey, this isn't for passive reading, it's for participation." And it's not a quick fix, it's a field guide. And anyone that's been in the federal government, anyone that's been in the military knows this premise of a field guide, which is
Yeah.
we can tell you what to do, but how well you embrace it, how much you interpret it and make it yours, you've got to do yourself. So, talk to us a little bit about how the heck did we get to the point of this kind of field guide, this arc of humanity? And were you writing it as you were doing it yourself? Was this a reflection back on what the journey had been like for you? How did this come to be?
Well, it all started back in May of 2020. It was a point in my life where I was really like the most challenging, darkest experience I've ever had. And so I've always been an optimist. I've always been someone who shows up, have a good attitude, work hard. I mean, that was the way that I was raised to get done whatever I needed to do. And so I reached a point in my life where a lot of the life experiences that I've had, especially surrounding being in a young family, being a young father and dealing with those challenges. I mean, it just really started to accumulate, and I didn't realize it until the point where I just felt so broken and so lost, and just at this point where I just didn't know who I was. It was an identity crisis or crisis of identity, and that I was just at this place where I did not know that I was willing to continue, and I was just so exhausted with the life that I was living. And not that I've had a bad life, because I've had a good life. I've had a lot of good experiences. The Navy took me around the world. I mean, I have a great family. I mean, I had my own share of trauma as a kid growing up, but I still come from a good, solid family structure with people around me that wanted me to be successful and and develop me and to give me the love and the attention and the structure that I needed to grow up and be a productive, good person. And so like it wasn't that those things were bad in my life, but it was just a lot of the trauma that I brought into my own family, that I watched my kids kind of suffer through. A lot of that just accumulated and it just broke me, and so I started experiencing a lot of challenging circumstances in my career. I just like COVID was happening during that time, and I had just gone through a traumatic breakup in a relationship that I was in, and so all of these things just compounded, and I just it just hit me, um, and it had been accumulating over like several years, 4 or 5 years, and I was at the point where I was just tired, just exhausted, and I was just pretty much finished with carrying everything that I had carried, and I just started thinking about what I wanted to do with my life and if I just wanted to continue. And so that's really where the arc started, because I decided that if I was going to continue, that I was going to live my life in a completely different way. And I was doing a lot of therapy at the time, and so I spent several years really unpacking a lot of things in my life. Very fortunate to work with a local therapist who she would come visit me at my house, and we would just sit on the front porch and we would just talk about things. And so it was very helpful to have that, uh, that person who had the capacity to just help me work through a lot of these things. And and then right around that same time, AI and ChatGPT started becoming more mainstream, and I just spent a lot of time just like unpacking everything, just unpacking myself, the world, just all of these questions and these challenges that I'd been through, just trying to make sense of things and trying to understand myself more and work through, all of the things that, that were burdening me, and then that's really where it all started. And so from that point, I created a 52-week email series, to every aspect of life, and I sent that out to 15 of my closest friends and family, to see what they thought. And they spent a year, getting every email. They went out every Sunday at like 7 a.m. And I started getting a lot of good feedback on the content and on the insight that people were getting by reading through it each week, because it was like just like a short, motivational style email, kind of like what's in the arc now. And then once I realized the impact that it was having, I thought that it would be beneficial for me to put that into a book, and package it in a way where, if it was able to help me, that it would be able to help other people that was dealing with depression, which is what I've dealt with for a long time. And so I think a lot of the insight that I got from experiencing depression and from learning about myself and doing the work that it takes to really unpack these things that you're challenged with and burdened with, I felt that it would be beneficial to put it into a book and see if if it could help other people. So that's what I did.
I love it. And it makes sense when you explain that, like, that 52 week, every week an email kind of tester run of, hey, is this helping? Is it something good? And we're going to get into the components of it. This idea of there's a reset, you have a vignette, and then there's challenges that kind of come with it. One seems not too bad, the next one's like, oh, this is a little bit of a push, and then there's one that makes you really uncomfortable, which is, I think, one of the themes we have on this pod is sitting in that
Hmm.
uncomfortable space. And that's really a theme that you have. But in your very opening section, there's a statement where you say your life changes the moment you stop negotiating with your own potential.
Yeah.
And I thought that one hit me like a ton of bricks, because I'm in this space too, as so are so many people we know, where society changed around us and we were faced with, are we just going to kind of conform and fall in line and do what's expected? Or is this the sign that you stop and you go, what am I capable of? What the heck do I really want to do? How do you make this possible? And I know some of that comes with some privilege, but the potential that we all have within us is so much more than we ever tap, by far.
Hmm.
And what did it mean when you were kind of thinking that through, of how had you negotiated with your potential in the past, and this idea of, I'm not going to do that anymore because of whatever boundary it's setting on me?
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of it is I think it's common, and it's easy to kind of outsource a lot of your decision making to other people and to circumstances, to beliefs and customs that we inherit. And so I think when it comes to negotiating with your potential, like you have to choose what you want out of your life, and you have to decide for yourself the commitment that you're willing to give, whatever that is. And so, like if you're someone who wants to lose weight, but you go out and you drink soda, you eat fast food. You're That's a negotiation. Like you're negotiating with something that you're supposedly committed to giving yourself. And so if you are in toxic relationships, you're in a job that isn't rewarding, you have a belief structure that doesn't align really with your true values, and the true essence of who you are or who you want to be. Like that's a negotiation. Like you're negotiating circumstances that put limits on what you are capable of becoming. And so I think that it takes a lot of effort and it takes a lot of willpower to to figure out what those things are and to strip them away so that what remains is the purest form of what who you are and what you want to be. And so you don't allow these negotiations to even take place. You don't allow them to be, a part of your thought process. I mean, it's a complete mental shift to say, I don't care what anyone else thinks about me. I don't care what the society or what religion or what any kind of like inherited beliefs. People in my family, like this is who I am, and this is who I want to be, and this is what it will take to do that. And so it may require going to the gym, working out, eating clean, changing the way that you think, changing the people that you surround yourself with, changing how you spend your time, changing how you live your life. I mean, there's a whole array of decisions that you have to make to get to that purest form of the person that you want to be. I mean, those are the decisions you have to make, and so that's the negotiation. Is like, are you willing to let other people dictate? Are you willing to entertain the fact that yes, I want to lose weight, or yes, I want to be healthy, but I still like pizza? Like you have to make those decisions and you have to commit to it. And it all goes back for me to just the mindset. Like if you don't lock that mindset in, everything else becomes a negotiation. But once you make the decision to say, like this is what I'm doing and this is who I will be and this is the effort it's going to take and I will do it. And there is no other option. I mean, I think that's the key to eliminating that negotiation.
And doing that, and I think sometimes we often focus on what we will cut out in order to get to a certain point that we're looking for. But oftentimes, and I know I've talked about this on some other episodes, when you say no, you make room for yes, or you make
Yeah,
room for things that actually benefit you on that journey in a different way. So if it's a no, I'm not going to engage in, or I'm not going to go get ice cream 3 days a week, but now I can go to my favorite workout class with my best friend who has been trying to get me to go. And so we're going to shift to that place. So there are always these trade offs that happen in between. And I think our comfort often has us sit with one place versus saying, all right, well, let me just give it a try. And I love in the 52 weeks, the idea is we're doing this in the week and the focus is
yeah,
on that week. And the discomfort is going to be felt in that week. And then you do the
yeah.
reflection and you get this feel of, well, how did that work for me? Was it actually good when I can look back on it, or was it just something that I'm gonna have to do this a few more times to see if it truly resonates? So as
Mhm.
you were doing this first round of the email practices with these people that folks that were close to you, what was some of the feedback that you got from them? Were there things that they were like, I could never do this, or that was the best thing that I challenged myself to do? What was some of that you heard from them along the way?
Well, the original email series didn't have any of the challenges in it. It was more of just a reflection. And none of the email series had like my personal story embedded into it as well. And so it was really just like unpacking different aspects of like, humanity. And it's just like, nihilism, the idea that like, the theory that like there really is nothing that matters in life. Like if you look at the world, if you look at your life, you strip everything away, there's really no meaning. Right. Meaning is a sign. Meaning is something that you attach to it yourself. It's something that you determine. If you look at like the aspect of time, you look at the aspect of love as a force and fear, like just unpacking all of these different elements of, like what does it mean to be alive? What does it mean to unpack the world around me and everything that's going on in the world around me on a physical level, on a meta level, on a spiritual level. We live in a grand universe, and so like there are people who believe that God exists, and there are different religions. Every religion has a different belief, but there are people who don't believe in God. There are people who believe in the collective universe. If you look at just energy as a whole, like if you look at the sun is a form of energy. Calories are a form of energy. Everything is surrounding us has energy. It has life, and so it's just like it was more of just like trying to observe all of these different things that when you combine them together, that is the existence of life. It's the consciousness of being alive. And so it was really like it's a deep dive into humanity. And so it didn't have any structure really. It was more of just like this journey through the universe where we just like touch along these different topics. And just try to like take a moment to think about them, like the power of now, like right now, right? Like nothing else matters. Really, in the future, it doesn't matter. The past doesn't matter. All that matters is right now. I'm on a podcast with Natalie Bulger, and we're talking about the arc of humanity and focusing on the now and embracing it for what it is, and not giving anything else room in your mind. And so it was just unpacking a lot of those different concepts. And so one of them was death. Like the very first week was actually the concept of death, and at some point in your life, you're going to die. And so, like, you have the moment between now and the moment that you're dead to live out your life. And so, just get people to think and to really take a moment to pause and reflect, and doing the same thing that is formally structured in the arc of humanity now, but just a very loose way, very fluid way. It was just like a journey, and you're along, like we're all taking this journey together to explore these different areas. And so it wasn't until I really sat down to write the book that I started thinking through the importance of adding that structure, because from a behavioral perspective, like, we need to be challenged, we need to have that structure to walk us through and guide us through these things that we need to start digging through in our life. And so layering, from a start to down to a deep dive, helps people to determine which level they're willing to engage with. Because a deep dive, I mean, you're really doing the work. I mean, that's where a lot of the work is, to figure out these different parts of your life and the things around you. Whereas the start challenge is something that is easy to do. It starts building momentum, and it gets you in the flow and the habit of working through each week and working through all the challenges.
So I love that you touched on the idea of presence, and I hope it's okay with you. I wanted to read just they're like two liners from different parts
Please,
of the book, but that hit on a few. One was regret pulls you backward, anxiety drags you forward. The present, the real present, is razor thin and easily sacrificed. And it
yeah,
was like in that second, and it wasn't that I was falling into that anxiety and regret, but I was like, wow, how much of my day do I think thinking about what I need to do or what is
yeah,
coming up? And that being one of the challenges is you take away this idea of future forward thinking, and I'm like, I feel like my brain's going to have so much space when I do that. So almost looking forward to that. But you had another one where time isn't something that happens to you, it's something that you either inhabit or abandon. And I've
mhm,
had a fixation with time lately where I'm like, wow, it feels like it's racing away from me and I can't get ahead of it. And this whole wanting to control it versus seeing it as this construct someone has created. And if I just enjoy my moment or I think about this moment, my time becomes so much more valuable in some way. You had another one, my body isn't responding to the present, it was reenacting the past.
mhm,
And I hope everyone just sits with that one for a minute because in this that first few weeks, there's a lot in there about, well, what do you feel like? And my therapist asked me that a lot. She goes, where do you feel it? And I'm like, I feel like I lose my ability to talk. Like everything just like constricts in that chest and that throat area. And so these things that have been really hard, I think, over time for me or people I know to put into, like I said, those bite-sized little nuggets. And I just want to throw these on post-its and put them on my wall and remind myself sometimes of it takes 2 seconds to kind of put this into a tangible moment to start to make sense of it. And we'll definitely hit on some more as we go. But you had also mentioned in the beginning this idea that every human carries fire. And I think sometimes we think of fire as this very visible, very loud moment. People see it, they're either trying to put it out or they're trying to come to it. But I think for me, and I wonder, your thoughts on this, is that sometimes fire is the embers that are burning nonstop. They're the hardest thing to put
Mhm,
out. They're there, they're constant, they're a little quieter, and they're also sometimes the most damaging because
mhm.
it's you walk away and they ignite again and they come to be. So when you mentioned that every human carries fire and it's kind of what we do with that fire, what are some of the ways that you've seen that in your life, or some of the instances that it brought that kind of visualization to be for you, or that you see in others?
Well, I've always believed that that fire is a form of purification, like fire consumes, and so I think the fire in this aspect is that driving force, that energy, that desire uh, to get whatever it is out of life that you're moving towards. And so for me, like the fire, like I've always had a fire in my belly to accomplish a lot of things in my life, and from a professional perspective to personal to family, and I think that is the driving force behind a lot of what everyone does. I mean, like that's the reason you get out of bed every morning. It's the reason why you do your podcast and your show, and so I think that that fire for me, like it kind of got smothered for a long time. It went through a period where it was just like it was struggling to get the oxygen it needed to burn cleanly and to grow. And so I think that is a challenge that a lot of people have. And so it's a method of, like, stoking that fire within you to energize you, to consume you to the point where, like, it's a raging inferno that it can't be stopped. It's like a wildfire, like, it's out of control. It cannot be stopped, and it consumes everything in its path, and it purifies it. And so I think that that is the essence of having that fire within you. And I think a lot of people have the fire. I think for a lot of people, like they don't recognize it or they mischannel it, or they just like for me for a long time, it was just kind of smothering, and it wasn't able to breathe. It wasn't able to burn cleanly and grow. And I think that you get to that point where you strip away all of the things that are impurities out of your life, then it gives you that room to have a raging fire within you where it energizes you and it pushes you forward, everything that you're trying to accomplish in your life.
It's funny because sometimes we think of fire as destruction. When you say wildfire and it's destroying everything. But how often do we realize then that in some of those areas it's created space for new life to grow, and
Yeah.
what's left behind is nurturing, and this idea of oxygenating the fire. And you can't do it if, to your point, you're smothered or you're constricted in a way that there's no flow of that there to keep that kind of resounding. So I have to ask, what have been some of the hardest parts for you on the recalibration journey? Which
Mhm.
components did you struggle the most with? Because I know which ones I will when I'm looking at this based on my own kind of starting of understanding the onion of my life. But what did you run into? And this is going to take us into some of what I feel is very validating and how you've recounted things. But
Mhm.
let's touch on that quickly before we get into the validation piece.
I mean, I think the hardest part for me was just like seeing relationships in my life that I thought were whole and very nurturing, like fade away, like the people that I thought would be there the darkest moments of my life that weren't there and that distanced themselves from me. And so that was really hard. And so when like trying to recalibrate myself and trying to reshape myself and put myself on a trajectory where I was growing and also healing at the same time, like having to remove some of those relationships from my life, and it was disheartening. It's one of those things where you like relationships are what bind us, right? Like life by itself. Like I'm a bit of a loner. I've always been a bit of a loner, but I've got a big family, and I've got a good circle of friends around me, and so having to having to see and experience the fact that a lot of those connections weren't as real and as deep as I thought that they were in the moments when I needed them most, was probably the hardest thing to deal with, and to make the decision afterward to part ways with a lot of people who just weren't healthy, like that they didn't bring value to my life in the way that I needed it, and they didn't give me the capacity to be who I am and be the person that that I wanted to become. That's probably the hardest part.
And that relates directly to the one line in here, "The facts didn't change, the lens did." So as
Yeah.
we shift our perspective or our goals or what we're looking for, it's like the progressive lenses, right? They change kind of shades, and we see different things as a part of that, or night vision goggles let us see different things. And I think that that's where that piece of playing into the looking backward or looking forward, and there's been so many times in life where I feel like my lens changed, the facts didn't, I saw things differently, and in that moment, I was more focused on, well, how did it take me so long to realize this? And
Mhm.
so you're just dragged down by this wanting to understand, well, how did it take so long to get here versus the celebration of, "Oh, okay, I'm here now." Like,
Mhm.
okay, next step, like moving on to the next thing. And it's that piece of the universe that you touched on too, where we're just such a small stinking blip, an atom in the universe. And though we may feel as if our ripple, and we see this in everyday life, how one person can have such a massive impact on the world, but in reality, our day-to-day moments, that 60 seconds that we're in, our ripple may end up really big, but in the grand scheme of things, it's big for us because we're sitting in it
Mhm.
and we're living in it. And those relationships are either going to survive that or they're not. And you have
Mhm.
to, we're the engine behind our undoing. And so really grasping that. But one of the ones that you had, and I just, this is probably gonna get in a really big, like, printout on my wall, was where you said, "Fear has become directional. Fear's door is never pleasant, but on the other side is the person you were created to be."
Yeah.
And I l have to say, and I'm hoping people are like, "Oh, moment, light bulb," because how often are we told, "Just don't be afraid of it. Just take the leap. Just do the thing." And this is saying the same thing, but it validates that idea of it's not pleasant. It's not enjoyable to be in that space, to be totally afraid of, where does the next paycheck come from? Do I have
Yeah.
somewhere to stay tonight? Will I have someone to be there if I'm hurt or injured? And it goes back to your experience with your motorcycle wreck and talking about what it felt like for your daughters to come in. It, let's take a second and just talk about fear, because all of this to me is, fear is that thing that very much could halt you. That directional piece is, it stops you. But if it doesn't, and we push through it, we end up in a directional place that we never may have gotten to before.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to, like, the negotiation with your potential because, like, fear I think fear for everyone. I think no one is immune to fear. I think that it's something that I think it's genetically programmed into you as a human being because it's a survival mechanism. It's a way of making judgment about the things that are around you and determining whether or not it's something that you can survive. And so I think that it's inherent in us as humans. I think that probably all living animals have the same genetic responses to fear, but I think it's also one of the most crippling things because we get so trained to compromise based on the fear, and I think that that's where the growth is. It's like coming on this show. Like I've never done a podcast before. This is my first podcast ever. And so it's like, like you have a certain element of fear and apprehension about how am I going to show up on camera? Like, how's my voice going to sound? Are people going to like me? Am I going to say the things that I need to say and I want to say that really help to resonate and connect with people and to help them in their journey? And so I think that fear is just one of those things that you're constantly faced with. And I think it's a discipline. It's like going to the gym. It's like you have fear and shows up in your life, You don't negotiate with it. You acknowledge it for what it is, and then you move through it because you can't get to the other side of you until you move through the door of fear. You know, you have to acknowledge it. Um, you have to understand what it is that it's trying to communicate to you, but ultimately you have to take that step and you have to move through it. And I think that's where the growth is. That's where a lot of the exponential growth is, because you are constantly putting yourself in a position where you are growing as an individual, and you're doing things that you wouldn't ordinarily do, because you were limiting yourself and negotiating with yourself on whether or not you were capable or willing to do them. And so I think fear is like one of the biggest challenges anyone ever deals with. And I think that if there's one thing that you can do for yourself that gives you the capacity to discover that person in you that is there. I mean, that goes back to your potential. Like, what are you capable of, and what is the things that are standing in the way of that, and what do you need to do to move through all of those challenges and those fears that stand between you and that person.
And I like the highlight of, fear has a place in survivalship. It makes me think of the animated movie The Croods, where the dad was always afraid of everything. But as they took little baby steps, they learned more, they explored more. Didn't mean they didn't get hurt along the way or things happened. There are times where fear will tell us to stop, and it probably may save our lives. But
Yeah,
over time, we've turned all of our fear into this thing that makes us feel like we might die tomorrow. Like,
yeah.
that's my world of I'm so afraid someone's going to say something and make me question myself and the world will end. It's like, no, it's not. You'll go to bed tomorrow and you'll wake up. And so placing fear in a and where it belongs, in a sense of, is it telling me something about myself? And that, again, back to those reflections of, what is this indicating to me? What is the thing that it's bringing up? What is the ingrained moment in my head that I've just always accepted and never challenged as the reality of life? And there's, you talk about belonging isn't about perfection. And in a world where perfection is asked of us on a regular basis, when
Mhm,
we're in healthcare, perfection is supposed to be that we're not going to err anymore, even though it's human. You have to deliver care. You have to make sure everyone survives. You have to do all of this stuff. And the reality is, it's still an imperfect science. Everything in life is this imperfect science.
mhm,
So, striving for back to that fire and that potential doesn't mean that you're going to be perfect. And who defines what the heck is perfect, right? How
well,
have
you do, I
you
think.
yeah, yourself, you define what it is for you. But I have to there's a couple of those exercises I did glance through, and I was like, this might be the hardest 48 hours of my life if and it is. And it wasn't that there was a component of it's not doable. It is that the comfort that coping mechanism that I created in some way, doom scrolling being my favorite one, like, let me just go through threads or Instagram or look at all these things and maybe I'll giggle and maybe I'll laugh and maybe it's what I needed. But I haven't challenged myself to not do it. I've even told my therapist
Mhm,
I should disconnect on this trip. And then I end up fully connected the entire trip because it's possible. So, placing those limits to test yourself, were there times that you tested things and you're like, well, I'm glad I tried that, but that's not going to, like, we're not going to institute that for the rest of life. It's like, great, 30 seconds of a cold shower, cool. 5 minutes, maybe beyond a limit, and that's okay. Do you have moments when you're going through this where it's like, okay, I find out where for me is to that compromise point of, I tried it, I was uncomfortable. I sat in it. I think I understood it. And I am going to make that conscious decision to pull back a little bit. Maybe not go the whole way because, hey, I want that energy for the next challenge.
mhm. Not really. I mean, I think that, like, I've had moments in my past that were really unrelated to the book that I experienced fear. I mean, one of those is I was on a rock climbing trip down in Joshua Tree, and I just happened to be camping and met up with these rock climbers that were from Holland, and they just come and hang out and climb rocks for the month or whatever, however long they do it. And like they're doing it in flip flops, I mean, in like shorts, and like they have their nightly rituals where like they climb up to the top of the dome and they sit up there and they drink beer or whatever. And I'm not a rock climber, and so like they were trying to help me scale these rocks, and like it was really intimidating. And like they were just like, no, no, you can do it. And so like they just like walk you through step by step. Here's where you put your hands. Here's where you put your feet. And so like I was able to do it, but I was super uncomfortable. And especially sitting up there having a beer with them, I'm like, well, now I got to get down.
Right.
And there's just like, one guy's like 6'2", he's blonde hair from Holland, and he's in this flip flops, and he's just like scaling back down to the ground like it's nothing. I'm just like, how do you do it? And at that moment, I'm like, this is fun, but I don't know that I want to ever do a lot of rock climbing again. Like it really is something that's just not really cut out for me. But I think that like even in that moment, like it was a fear that was just kind of crippling. And it's like you get up there and you're like, well, how am I gonna get down now? Like, how am I gonna get down without breaking my neck or worst case dying? And like there's all these like fears running through your mind, potential opportunities of how you're gonna mess it up. And I think that that in itself is the point. It's like, you need to accept those moments, and I think you need to embrace them because that's where it's showing you where you're limited. Like that's the negotiation with your potential, right? Like you're negotiating with something that you could do. You're watching everyone else do it. Like they're all doing it easily. No one's falling. No one's dying. It's just a technique, and it's a rhythm of like how you move up and down box. And so I think those are the moments that you really learn a lot about yourself, and you're really able to grow in those moments. And so like I felt good just about the fact that I could climb with those guys. But at the same time, like I was super uncomfortable. And so I think that that fear and that limitation was something that really helped me to reflect on those moments that I can get, the most out of myself by just accepting it, embracing it, and trying to move past it. Do I ever want to be a rock climber? I don't think so. I mean, it's fun. But I think that if I really want to challenge my fear level and I want to challenge myself to overcome fear, rock climbing is definitely one way of doing it.
And I think we think sometimes we have these drastic examples and they make sense in some way because they're easy to picture, right? You're like, "Oh yeah, if I was in that state." But the component and a little bit of this beauty of this 52 weeks or this year long or more than a year long journey is that it starts with little bites. It starts with
Hmm.
combating that first fear of, well, if I put my phone down, if I miss an email that I need, like what happens? And guess what? The answer is nothing blows up unless you are literally the only life-saving human on the earth that can answer or do that thing that's needed. But I think, and that goes to the combating this world where we've become very accepting, and even this even goes for me of, well, that's too hard, or I can't afford to do that, or that could, contraindicate something from my health perspective. And the
Hmm.
point is, okay, well, if you can't do that one thing in this moment today, I bet you there's something else that you can challenge, or there's another component that you can take on, or another ingrained belief that you can question for a little bit or battle. And I think sometimes it's really, we sabotage ourselves in taking some of the first steps because what if it doesn't have negative consequences? What if that moment makes us thirsty for more? And now
Hmm.
it's like, okay, well, great. I learned something, but I've got kids at home and, I can't do X, Y, and Z. What are some of the ways that people who have a little bit of those societal restrictions on them, whether it be socioeconomic, whether it be, any of those pieces, can still embrace this idea of working on an arc, of getting from here to there? Maybe they don't have the same support systems or things like that. Because ironically, sometimes it's easier to do it when you're solo alone. Like, I couldn't
Hmm.
imagine doing some of these things thinking, "Oh, I'm responsible for these little kids in my
Hmm.
life." I don't have any of those, so that wasn't something I had to worry about. But what are a few of those maybe first steps for folks that feel like this idea is so overwhelming, but you gotta start somewhere?
Yeah. I mean, I think you just meet yourself where you are. I mean, like we all have different circumstances. And so I think just meeting yourself where you are in your life circumstance and looking around and saying, well, what are the things in my life that I want to change? And so just start working towards those things that you can change. So I think that a big part of it too is like the whole structure of the challenges was to identify different layers of people's willingness to challenge themselves. And also, some people aren't willing to do a deep dives. Some people just want to do more of a surface level, just to like start that process, and that's what it's for. And so it could be just like, part of the challenge in the first section of embodiment of the book. It's like going through your refrigerator and your cupboards and identifying all of the things in there that are not healthy, like that are not good for you, right? They're not good for your body. And so how can you get the most out of your body if you're putting stuff into it that is toxic and that is not healthy? And so it's, for some people, food is a challenge, or a lot of people, food's a challenge. And like a lot of people live in food deserts. And so that's all that they have is the stuff that, that exists at the Walmart and the Dollar General stores. And so that's a challenge. I mean, that's definitely a challenge for people, but I still believe that there's things that you can do to reduce, those types of foods that you're putting into your body. I mean, drinking water, like, being able just to drink more water every day is healthy for you. Looking at all of the relationships that are in your life and figuring out which ones are healthy and which ones are not healthy, and making a decision on which of those unhealthy relationships that you can cut out of your life. Your habits. I mean, we all are bound by our habits. So, taking some time to think through all of the habits that you have and whether or not they're healthy habits or they're not healthy habits. I mean, anyone can do that. It doesn't cost any money.
Mhm.
It doesn't really take a lot of time. It just takes the effort to identify what those habits are and then make the decision to change them. And that goes back to the whole negotiating with your potential. I mean, if you have a habit that's bad, and you decide that you aren't willing to let go of it, then that's a negotiation. Like, you're negotiating with your ability to get the most out of yourself because you have something that brings you comfort that you're not willing to let go of.
And you had a line, it was indifference turned out to not be a failing. It was the boundary that kept me whole. And I think that
Uh,
people in life like to say, well, if you're just indifferent, you just don't care. And it's like, no, I'm protecting my own boundary. And I think that in a lot of ways, there are some of those small things that if you take time to do and you're like you're indifferent maybe to the noise around you, that
mhm,
people it goes to those relationships. It's like, well, why don't you care? Why didn't you text me today? Why didn't you do this? And it's like, well, because I got other stuff, So,
yeah,
though, and those can be really painful. But also, I have found there are folks that I never thought would stick around relational wise that have loved this component of the journey. They're like, oh, like you canceled. I can cancel on you too. Like that's an acceptable thing to do. And like we're both empowered by it versus pushing through and not being happy. And just because you think the other person will be better for it. And it's like, no, they would have been better if we both would have agreed just to stay home today because we both needed to do something for ourselves. So I have to touch on bees at the end of the conversation because under all of this, one of the things that Joe told me when we connected was like, oh, he's a beekeeper, like he does bees. And there was a component in one of the vignettes that said, calm, what bees had taught you was calm isn't something you can think your way into. It's
mhm,
something you embody or you're rejected by the system entirely. And
mhm.
because thousands of bees will tell if you walk in, like you can't trick them, you can't smoke them into calmness necessarily. So, what has that journey with these tiny little insects that can pack a punch taught you or reinforced with you along the way?
I mean, bees are amazing, and I didn't discover them until several years ago, when I was going through depression, and I just happened to come across an organization here in Reno called Bees for Vets, and it's an organization that works with veterans and first responders with like PTSD, traumatic brain injury. In my case, I was going through major depression, and so it's a program where you go out to an apiary. There's like 35 hives out of the apiary. Every hive has an average like 30 to 40,000, 50,000 bees in it, and so you're literally surrounded by millions of bees. And so like you immediately get the sense that you're in their territory, right? Like it's something that's like they don't care about you, like you're a threat to them, and if you're too much of a threat, they will sting you to defend their hive. But like once you start to acknowledge them and their system, they have a lot of healing power. And so not only from an ASMR like vibrance perspective, because I think it's like a 460 hertz is what their humming sound resonates. And so like that in itself is like a healing property. But I think it's like just their system and the fact that they force you to slow down and be mindful because basically you're ripping off the roof of their house as you open their hive to start to inspect them and see what's going on. But to become a beekeeper, you're learning about the way of managing these bees and understanding the roles in the hive because every bee has a role. The whole system is a superorganism. So every bee has a role. They all execute that role. It's genetic. It's part of their genetic makeup. And so I think that being introduced to bees, it's always something that I've been interested in and fascinated by. But, like, the moment that I stepped into that apiary and was surrounded by these bees and started to learn more about them, it was very humbling. It was very empowering because it gave me the capacity to not only, like, like, block out everything else that was happening in my life, be present, be right here in the now with these bees and just watch them and observe them and how they operated. So it's like they're just relentless workers. It's pretty much all they do is work 24/7. I mean, they do sleep, which I didn't learn until later on that they do take breaks and sleep on the job. It's actually funny. um, but I think the biggest benefit for me was just like the mindfulness, like being around the bees. The honey's delicious, and so like if you've never had raw honey from a beehive, do yourself a favor and go get some because it's not only got healing power as well, but it's delicious. And so just being in front of a hive, just observing 50,000 bees working in unison as one system to accomplish one goal, and that goal is reproduction, right? So you have one queen, and that queen's going to lay an egg every 10 seconds. In the course of her life, she'll lay almost a million eggs and recreate a million different bees. And the whole system is set up to make sure that she has all of the nutrition, everything she needs, and that the hive is structured in a way where she can lay eggs constantly. And so, like, that's the goal. And so, just watching them execute that constantly, just, no ulterior motives, like no other ambitions. Like it's just solely focused on procreation. Like we need to produce. We need to go out. We need to forage. We need resources. We need nectar for energy. We need pollen. And so they're out there pollinating everything around you. They're out there gathering all the nectar. They're bringing that back into the hive and they're feeding that to all the eggs that the queen's laying. They're feeding the queen. They're creating royal jelly that the queen eats. That's how you actually make a queen. You can take an egg and just feed it royal jelly continually, and it turns into a queen. It's like a superpower or superfood. Um, and just learning that like that they're ruthless as well because if you're not doing your job as a part of the colony, they will evict you. And so there's this thing in the bee world where like everyone makes fun of the drone bees because most people don't think know that most of the bees are females. Like the females do all the work, and so like they're the ones who are like you have the nurse bees, forager bees, house bees. The queen herself is obviously a female. You have scout bees that they go out and they find new locations to expand their hive and their colony. But the drones are the male bees, and the drone's sole purpose is to mate with another queen from another colony. And so, like one time a year, they have a mating season. So all the drones will take off and they'll try to find the queen and mate with her. And she mates with like 25, 30, 40 different drones because she's like self-selecting for all the genetic properties that she's trying to pass on in her own colony. And if you're not successful in mating, you go back to the hive and you're basically like, well, that didn't work out. And so you start just hanging out, like all you do is eat, right? Like you're a male bee, you have no other role. You can't go forward, you can't defend yourself because you don't have a stinger. You have no role in the hive other than eating. And so once the season starts to dry up and once the foraging starts to dry up around you, all of the females are like, well, it's time for you to go. And so they kick out all the drones. They die instantly because they can't take care of themselves. And so you walk up to your hive and you have all these bees that are dead on the ground, and then most of them are drone
Wow.
bees because it was time for them to go. And so like they have this ruthless mindset of, we have to continue this hive at all costs. And so sometimes that's the queen herself. And so at a certain point, a queen will get to a point where she's infertile and she's no longer able to produce fertilize the eggs that she produces. And at that point, the colony's like, well, she's got to go too. So they all pile on top of her. They will like overheat her until she dies, and then they'll just drop her out the front door, and they'll go make another
Wow.
queen.
That's incredible, and it's interesting because at some point we may be like, "Well, we can't all be bees like that." However, if they didn't have that operation and we weren't able to see the pollination and everything else that they are a part of in the ecosystem, like, it's
Yeah,
not just that we wouldn't have honey, there would be a whole lot of things impacted, and so how important it is that those I ingrained genetic pieces of them do continue in that way. But to the same point, if they're scouting for new locations, they still have this piece of innovation and knowing they need to change. Okay, we need to go somewhere new now. Like, hey, everything's, not available for us. So we've got a new spot that we need to go. So it's not just that they operate off of a manual and they never change. There's still variability in there. It's just how it works within their components of things. So
right.
I love that kind of, coming to, and I always laugh. I've never been stung by a bee. And it's the one moment in life I always feel calm when a bee comes around and I'm just like, yeah, I literally can't. I'm not going to move. I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to let it do what it wants to do. Does it want to relax on me for a minute? Cool. I'm going to take a look at how pretty it is. All these things. There's no reaction. And I laugh because everyone else around me is like, oh my God, get this thing away.
Last thing you want to do is swat at them.
Right. But it forces me back to our timepiece of just pause. Like it just is like, okay, need to just be fully kind of in the moment and it'll move on and do what's next. So, love that background on it. Joseph, this has been an amazing conversation. And as we're wrapping up, I want to hear where people can find information about Arc of Humanity, the book, but also Expedition, your nonprofit. We'll get that linked in the show notes for everyone if they want to take a look at it. But where can we find this right now? If people are interested in being able to go through it, mark it up like I have, check off, what they've been able to complete, things like that.
It's on Amazon right now. You can get it as an ebook. You can get the paperback version. There's also a hardback for people that prefer hardbacks. It's going to be in the local library soon. I'm working with a distribution company to get it into all the local libraries, especially in the ebook form. But they can also go to the website, the foundation website at expedition.org, xpdshn.org, and there'll be a free version of the book on that website. So you just sign up, enter your email address, and you'll have access to the free ebook on the website.
Awesome. And anyway, if people are interested in talking to you more or learning more about you, do they do that through Expedition? What are the best ways that people can connect with you in order to share this story more? If there's other podcasters listening or anyone that would hopefully want to engage and be a part of this right along with you.
They can contact me at joseph at xpdshn.org. That's the foundation email address. And just reach out to me. I'd love to have a conversation with anyone. So
Awesome. So we'll get all of that in show notes for folks. Joseph, anything you'd like to share with folks as we wrap up today? What are kind of final parting messages, final maybe challenge that folks walk away with after they've listened to the episode today and that fire's starting to burn a little bit, or they're wondering what they can stop compromising or negotiating with themselves? What's the ending thought for everyone?
I think the ending thought is that pain is good for you. And I think that, depression, I look at depression as a superpower. I look at it as a way of it helped me to gain the perspective I needed to really uncover the things in my life that I needed to address. And without depression, I don't think that I would have ever, done that. And so, I mean, you know, I think having dealt with depression, I'm a stronger person. It's something that I feel like that I have a more definite way and more intentional way of looking at my life. And so I think that if you're a person who is dealing with your own set of challenges and you have some dark moments in your life, I would just recommend that you just sit with them, and just embrace it and just try to listen to the signals and try to figure out what it is it's trying to communicate with you. Because I think that there's a person on the other side that you can't get to until you go through that work, until you go through that process. And so having gone through it, I mean, I feel like it's a valuable experience. It's not for the faint of heart. It wasn't easy in the beginning. It was definitely not easy in the beginning, but I think you just show up every day, breathe, drink water, just try to be the best version of yourself that you can be, and just work through these moments, and just try to uh, find the insight that it's trying to communicate to you. I think that the person that you get on the other side is a completely different person that's transformed, that's more capable, that's more empowered, and it's something that you will thank yourself for once you get to that point. But that's the work that you got to do, is to get through it, and you can only do that one step at a time, one breath at a time, and just be kind to yourself and love yourself. You don't need anyone else to love you. Like, just love yourself and figure out who that person is that you want to be, and then just go chase that and be that person and get to it.
I love that, and it really does, as some also having depression, it taught me that I could feel, and that feeling was telling me something. And it was funny when I got treated with medication that I felt like I couldn't feel anymore, I didn't wanna be on it. I was like, "Take me off."
Yeah,
Like, I would rather feel really sad and try to figure out how do I work within this than anything. And I think those resources are out there for you, but to your point, you still have to do the work. Nothing can just
yeah,
magically alleviate or be fixed with medication, with anything like that. There's still a component of you that has to push through it and understand this discomfort is here for a reason. What does that look like? So if you're looking for a tool to maybe start with that, the Arc of Humanity expedition.org, reach out to your own local resources that you have available or those around you that are on similar journeys. But Joseph, thank you so much for bringing this different kind of perspective
you're
to how
welcome.
we can
Thank you,
challenge
Natalie.
ourselves on an ongoing basis. It's been really enlightening, and I am thrilled to start my own initial journey,
I'm
and
I'm
see how
glad you
this
finally
goes.
got it.
Yes. Well, thank you, everyone. Appreciate you listening in to another episode of Motivation and That. We hope you will join again soon and have a wonderful day ahead and week ahead. There's so much more to come in this hot mess to high potential world.
Thank you. Have a good day, Natalie.